If you've been following this channel for a while, then you know that I'm not just reading the news of the day, I'm not just following my gut, but instead I'm using mathematical approaches to try to determine what kind of trading rules actually work. So I'm doing simulations, I'm doing backtests, I simulate buying and selling with prior data, and then try to determine how well do those strategies still work going forward. So you're probably familiar with the concept of moving averages. So those smoothed out prices, and a lot of people just use, say, the 30-day or the 100-day or the 200-day moving average. And I've just updated my backtest on the best moving average. I talked about the 120-day simple moving average for Bitcoin, but now things have changed. The moving average, the best moving average, has changed. We're going to talk about the results in a second, but first here's the approach. What we've got here is the Bitcoin price, and we've also plotted the best moving average. So here's the approach. We want to follow the current trend. So we are long, we bet on rising prices whenever we are above the moving average. And when we close a day below the moving average, that's when we go short. So we're not just buying and holding. Instead, we are out of the market, or rather even betting on falling prices when things tend to decline. Currently, by the way, we are above the moving average. We should be long. There are a few failed signals every now and then, and this is not nice, as in we sell low and then buy back in high again, and then sell low and we buy back in high again. There are a few small bad signals every now and then, but in general, following this moving average is the best. Now, the approach works extremely well. Buying and holding Bitcoin is this white line, and the backtested result is here in turquoise. But let me first explain what I did here. So this is the data set. We are using the daily close prices taken from Coinbase starting in 2014, and this goes all the way to October of this year. We are then simulating either longing Bitcoin or shorting Bitcoin, depending on where currently the price is relative to the moving average. And then we check what is actually our annualized return using that trading strategy. So I've backtested all the moving averages from the 2-day all the way up to the 200-day moving average. Buying and holding Bitcoin during that time frame would have given us annualized 81%. There is a 1x leverage, so both when we go long or short, we're just going 1x. We're going to talk about the optimization of that leverage in a second. And we can calculate based on different trading fees. So over here, we've got now 0.05% trading fees. That's the typical fees for perpetual futures. For the spot market, it tends to be 0.2%. And so here's the result if we do spot trading. On the x-axis is the duration of the moving average in days, and on the y-axis is the annualized performance. So the geometric average per annum, what we get in performance. The line in black is the reference point, that's just buying and holding. So we can see when we trade too often that the trading fees tend to destroy our performance. We tend to get negative performance, especially for all the moving averages below 10. If we go above that, we tend to make money, but there is an optimum, and that optimum is the 125-day simple moving average. It's not anymore the 120-day, it's the 125-day. Now here are the same results, but this time with 0.05% trading fee. So this is now perpetual futures. Just have a look at the difference. Once we use perpetual futures, we tend to already outperform by using the 44-day simple moving average. We gain quite a few percentage points as well, even if we take the longer term moving averages. So in general, when we try to time the market, it's extremely important to keep the fees low, because the fees add up, and if we tend to trade several times a year over multiple years, this can have quite a bit of an impact. Now again, here is the return over time using the 125-day simple moving average. And that's on a linear scale, but probably it's better to look at this on a logarithmic scale that we can see how this develops over time. What I find fascinating about the chart is just how consistent the outperformance is. As in, the drops from the top to bottom tend to be much smaller compared to buying and holding Bitcoin. Here the drawdowns can be 80 or 90%, but the main advantage of timing the trends is that we reduce our losses during bear markets. Now both the 125-day and the 44-day simple moving average work. And so let's plot both of them in a chart. The shorter term moving average is in red, the longer term moving average. Currently we are above both of those moving average. We should be long, and we would turn bearish again once we fall below 113,500 or $112,700. Now, a chart like this poses the question, is there potentially a way to lever this up and make even more gains? Since we are already dealing with the perpetual futures market, we might as well use some leverage. But how much? The answer is over here. So on the x-axis, we've got the leverage. On the y-axis, we've got the annualized performance. If we go 1x, we get this performance over here, 115% per annum. But if we lever this up slightly, we get more annualized performance. But then there's a turnaround point. Once we go too high on the leverage, then the bad signals depress our capital enough that it's very hard to recover from this again. So imagine you go long on Bitcoin and then Bitcoin crashes by 10% and you lever this up by 5x. Suddenly you've lost half of your capital. Once you've lost half of your capital, you need another 100% in order to be back to square one. So there is an optimum here. That optimum mathematically is at 2.25x. So here's the return with 1x, which is no leverage. Here is the return with 2.25x. The optimal leverage, which gives us annualized 197%, at least in the back-tested data, right? We don't know how much we will appreciate in the future, right? Buying and holding gave us even 80%. So obviously the returns are declining over time. But let's say we go beyond the optimum. So we lever up by 4x. Then we get this chart over here. When there are bad signals, we just crash too much in our capital. It's very hard to recover. All we get is volatility. And of course, the higher we go with the leverage, the worse the performance gets. So really, leverage is exactly like fire. The right amount can be useful, but too much can be catastrophic. Here, this is a chart using 5x leverage. So mathematically, the best approach is to buy whenever we are above the 125-day simple moving average, when we close a day above that line, and to sell, or rather bet on falling prices when we are below that line. Now, I went one step even further. So I presented that data to the premium members of this channel. The link, by the way, is down below. It's thebitcoinstrategy.com. And I got the feedback, why don't you try out different leverages for the long and the short position? And the results were very fascinating. When we separate the leverages, we can actually go much more long versus short. So have a look at this. If we go 2.25x both for long and short, we get the black line. But if we only go long and never go short, then the optimal leverage is actually 2.75. Now, if we only go short and we never go long, then the optimum leverage is exactly 1. So how does this look like in practice? So let's say we never buy Bitcoin, we only short Bitcoin, and we do this with a lever of 1x. Then we're getting this chart. Now this chart doesn't look very impressive, as in we do underperform buying and holding Bitcoin. But that's to be expected, right? All we do is just betting on falling prices or we are out of the market. What I find fascinating is that still we make money, even though Bitcoin has appreciated that much throughout the time. Of course, we make the bulk of our money in the bear markets, and during a bull market, we tend to sometimes get our failed signals where we slightly lose. The inverse of that strategy is to only go long and never short. So we're just in cash, and that also outperforms just buying and holding, and it does so with less volatility. But we're not taking advantage of the bear markets. We're not making any money in that scenario. And so the mathematical ideal is, when we long, that we take a 2.75 leverage. Then we're getting this chart. This has the highest return. Now, should we do this in practice? It very much depends on your risk tolerance, because there had been drawdowns that were higher compared to just buying and holding Bitcoin. And that's something I do not like. That's only the case, however, if you're not making money in a bear market, if you're not shorting. If you're shorting at the same time, be it just with a 1x, you're doubling your money during a bear market. And so I understand this can be a bit complex, but in general, the idea is that when we long, we can have some leverage up to 2.75x. When we go short, we should not necessarily engage in leverage. 1x seems to be the optimum. We are not becoming rich through a bear market, but we do slightly grow our capital while most people get completely destroyed. And this is what brings us growth long term. Now, in theory, this looks all very impressive, as in we outperform the market consistently, we don't have too much risk, but at the same time, we have to check the market every single day, we have to do the trades every single day, and that's why I opened up a copy trading vault for that strategy for the premium members. So you don't have to check the strategy every single day. You simply just deploy your capital and I will execute the trades according to this fixed rule set. The details, how to make that deposit, how to become part of that copy trading vault, again, is described in a separate video in premium. So once you sign up, just go to the tutorial section and check out this video, the Bitcoin strategy moving average vault. It's an 8-minute video. It explains everything step by step, how to deposit the capital on the platform and how to automatically copy trade. Now, will this approach work as well in the future as it did in the past? Of course, nobody knows, but I still prefer this to just reading the news or just following gut feel. If you've got a fixed rule set, I believe this takes away a lot of random guessing. It might not always be optimal. It doesn't help us to sell the exact top or buy the exact bottom, but it tends to give us the right market direction long term. A link to premium pops up directly here on the screen. Just click on that. It will lead you to the website. If it's the very first time here, feel free to subscribe. I publish this regularly. A like would be very much appreciated as well. Looking forward to seeing you on premium or on YouTube the next time. Cheers.